Well, the last directing council was more of a educational. I felt like I was a tourist coming in from the outside and looking at everything that was being done. This directing council, I was a little bit more involved in a lot of the preparations leading up to, and what I've seen is actually a very good execution of the directing council. I think it's important to have these types of meetings because it helps us lay out our work plan for the coming year or the coming years. So, but I was talking to the official from the governing bodies meeting office that we have here in PAHO, and I told her that the directing council was like a duck swimming on water. It looks very smooth at the surface, very nice, view, but underneath the water there's a lot of paddling that's going on. And when we put on a directing council, that's what I get. There's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes that a lot of people don't see. That would be in the area of logistics, in the area that governing bodies performs, KMC, a lot of things that people don't see that takes to put on a very successful directing council. So, one general impression that I got out of this is that there's a lot of dedicated people in the organization that help put this directing council on and help us put forth a very good face as an organization. Now, as far as the issues that have been discussed here, I mean, they range from from anything and everything that you can think of relating to public health, very key things that have been discussed this week, dealing from a plan of action for alcohol abuse, plan of action for substance abuse, and just anything that is related to public health in our agenda looking forward. And then the other good thing that I've seen here is the interaction between the ministers of health. I think it's very important. Also, the interaction between the organization and certain ministers of health, and where opportunities are discussed for technical cooperation to specific countries. And so I think that's very important, and it's very good to have that directing council meetings, and I think it's very helpful for us as an organization and eventually for the region as a whole. I think the important thing about WHO reform, which has been an effort that has been going on for quite a while right now. It started with a call by the Director General for a view of reforming the financing structures of WHO as a whole, and then has led up to a more holistic look at WHO as an institution, and obviously that translates to us as a regional office of WHO. I think that the importance of the discussion that we had here was that the ministers of health, as Dr. Chen has said it quite clearly in her comments when we had this discussion, is that they are the owners of the institution. So it was very important to go back and reach out to the ministers of health and get their inputs on the reform efforts to date, and to also give some guidance on where the reform effort should go to. One of the important things that came out was, at least from this region, is that maybe we don't need to rush into reform, that we need to make sure that we study it very well and that we make the right decisions that's going to lead us into the next few decades of what we want to participate in with regards to being a World Health Agency. So I think it was important. A lot of the member states asked for more time and for more participation and for more opportunities to provide input. The amount of time that we put into this discussion was, in the view of many ministers, not long enough. And the reason for that is because it originally wasn't part of the agenda, so we had the flexibility to be able to at least discuss it at this level. A lot of work was done prior to the meeting, the actual discussion, in the months leading up to to our directing council. So there has been a lot of opportunity for ministers to provide input, and many of them have taken that opportunity. But I think the good thing is that they had the opportunity to provide input. They were heard, and I think that the information that they provided is going to end up in the overall reform efforts that WHO conducts into the future. Well, these people, when they think about risk management, they think about negative only. The other side of the coin of risk is opportunity. One of the things over the last several years that we've been criticized as an organization is not having a risk, what they call a risk register or a risk profile in the organization. And we have heard that, but simply putting together a list of risks is not enough. And I think we need to have a culture of risk management, because it also, when appropriately employed, risk management systems also help you make the right decisions for the organization. And so the approach that we've taken is, before we start identifying risk, is to formulate the conceptual framework for risk management at PAHO. We did that. We had a risk framework approved by the EXM, the Executive Management of the organization, in May of this year. And we have been working now over the last several months in putting together how we're going to develop and deploy that across the organization. We're going to start small. We're going to focus in on the area of administration, because that's the area where most people associate risk, things such as financial risks, risks with regards to procurement and things of that nature. And those are basically the easy risks to put in place, and they're more operational risks. We want to work with PBR also in establishing a risk culture when we set out and write our next strategic plan, so that we can, from the strategic level, start thinking about what strategic objectives we should follow, and which maybe have a lower opportunity for the organization to complete and whatnot. So risk is not only negative. Risk is also a very positive thing. Because sometimes when you assume certain levels of risk, you also have opportunities that you can pursue. And I think that by putting together a very holistic risk management system, even though it's a little bit slower than what our auditors might want, I think in the long run, I think we'll be better poised at being able to make better decisions for the organizations when we look at it in a risk-informed way. Sometimes we make decisions to say, oh, there's a risk there, so we're not going to take that decision, or we're not going to participate in this line of action or whatnot. But we also miss opportunities by not assuming certain levels of risk in the organization. So the holistic look is going to be very important. I think next year, when we have the directing council, I think that the member states will be very happy at the progress that we've made up until that time, because we're going to start with operational view and then transition into a more strategic view. And then one last thing that I want to say about risk management is, the Canadian Development Agency has, as part of a $18 million project on maternal and infant health, has carved out a part of that project for risk management. And so we're going to be involved over the next year also in project risk, in analyzing the project aims and goals, and making sure that the decisions that are made on a risk-informed basis, and hopefully that'll help make that project a model project for us to be able to learn from and be able to employ with other projects that we do across the organization.